big, warm App Promotion Summit Berlin virtual welcome to the stage to Tanya from Babbel, who's going to be talking about product-led growth. So please give her a hand.
Hello, everyone. I think this is the weirdest way to interact with an audience which is interested in this forum, but I'm going to try my best. I'm looking at my screen. I can't see you all. So please use the chat function, the polls to write down your questions, your feedback, and interact with me. Before we dive deeper into product-led growth and what this means, I'd like you all to think about this question. How does your app's core user base grow? What we're trying to think of is not the leads that you generate, not the sales that you make, not the revenue yet. We're only thinking about core user base, people that use your app. If you'll head over to the polls section, you can also answer this in the form of the survey, but really keep this in mind. And hopefully at the end of this talk, you'll have some more ideas for answering this question. But before we dive deep, why is it that I'm talking to you about this? And here's a mini professional journey of what I've been doing in my professional life, and I'll take you through it. So this will help you in understanding why I'm talking to you. I started studying statistics, which means I got very accustomed to the world of and patterns, after which I moved to KPMG and I did consulting there, thinking about how companies should approach global versus local strategies. I moved to Barcelona to study at ISADE, which really helped me in thinking about how to challenge the status quo of the way things are done and businesses are run these days. I had a mini entrepreneurial expedition with ELO in the space of fashion and sustainable fashion, especially. And finally, now, which is where I'm going to be focusing this topic for today's talk, is my journey at Babbel, which is thinking about growth and scaling, but really with constraints. I'm also working as a strategic advisor to this edtech startup based in Berlin called Making Soft Skills Deep and Fun. And before, obviously, we're looking at frameworks and things, I want you to keep three things in mind. While I explore different ways of doing marketing in this competitive world of ads, there were three big things that I learned about how to do better marketing. The first principle is really know your product. And this might seem very obvious to people who are parts of smaller companies, 3 or 4 employees, where you're building the product and you're selling the same product. But as your organization grows, it's really important to keep in mind that what you're selling might not be the same as what you're building. So really, as a marketer, know your product. The second big principle is be user-centric. And for all my friends and colleagues who know me, they know that I secretly work for products like ClassPass, Captain Cook, where I love those products and I'm their biggest advocate. So as a company, knowing who your users are, who uses your product, really helps in understanding how can they bring more people into this world that you're building. And finally, pick speed over perfection. I know in this world of constraints and challenges, you might not have everything that you need to carry out the perfect experiment. So think creatively, test, build a hacky way to find out what you're looking for, iterate, and then roll out. And with this in mind, I want you to really adapt these principles when you think of what I'm going to tell you next. Moving on to the world of Babbel. For all those of you who don't know what Babbel is a language learning product. We've been in the market for over 10 years, and till date, we've had over 10 million paying customers. And 10 million paying customers is not an easy feat. So how do we think about user acquisition? And of course, most of you who are probably watching this understand the concept of using ads to fuel your marketing. I'm gonna walk you through this little diagram that we look at, which is basically a new visualization of a standard funnel. And it's important to know how to read this, because this is how I'm going to structure the next parts of my talk as well. So here you see, if you follow my cursor, a new user, basically a lead, is a person plus their email address. What we ended up doing, we have teams that monitor the lead to sale, and the sale, of course, is a subscriber who turns into a paying customer. So what we want to do is get leads to turn into paying subscribers. Paying subscribers now obviously contribute to revenue, which is certain part of it is turned into marketing budget. This marketing budget, as you'll see, is spent to buy ad inventory. And these ads finally result in acquiring new users. And you'll see CPC, which is cost per click, and customer acquisition costs are the metrics that we use to track if our ad spend is efficient or not. Standard paid marketing funnel in the form of a loop. This takes a new step when you start thinking about reducing your dependence on paid ads and being able to sort of look at the active user base inside your product. So you're reducing your dependence on paid ads by building superficial dynamics to acquire new users. Here, you'll see the subscriber that we refer to is a person that uses our app, and we'd like to turn them into advocates. How do we turn them into advocates? We're trying to build actions inside the product that could drive these people to talk about our product outside of our product. The metric that we use here is called the advocacy rate. Obviously, once this action is taken by the advocate, you can generate visits into the world of Babbel. And these new visits or new users are called friends. Friends, obviously, what we want them to do is convert into paying subscribers again, and eventually turn into sales, and eventually become advocates. So the advantage of looking at user acquisition as a non-funnel, but a loop, is that you stop thinking about the leaking parts of the bucket and you start thinking about compounding the growth. You start thinking about ways in which you can get new users to become advocates and keep acquiring new customers. Obviously, the discussion of costs is eliminated because the money spent is all to make your product experience better and not to give to third-party tools. The use case that I'd like to dive deeper into is the incentivized referrals. This is a project that I've been working on for the past 1 year at Babbel, and for all those of you who'd like to understand the mechanics of referrals and how it works at Babbel, is basically we're giving the advocates a financial incentive, a reward, if you may call it, to invite their friends into the world of Babbel. So the referral loop for us looks like this. An existing subscriber, and you may remember from the previous slide, we're looking at advocacy. What is the action that we're asking them to do? Is we're asking them to share a personal invite link with their friends. And the entire process and the entire concept of incentivized referrals is based on this action step. So an existing user invites a friend with a personal invite link. Friends visit a landing page. Friends enter into the world of Babbel, and friends sign up to become paying users. And in turn, obviously, the advocate receives a reward. So 3 frameworks helped us in building this mindset, in building this product-driven user acquisition mindset and scaling the referrals. And I'd like to share those 3 frameworks with you. The first one is starting to question the 3 Ws. The first one being who. Who are these people that you're targeting? What are they doing in the product? Are they new users? Are they active users? What do they do in the product really helps you in understanding the messaging that you want to build behind this entire loop. Why? Why is sort of the most important step that helps you really identifying what is the motivation for an advocate to take this action. I'll give you some examples. At Babbel, obviously similar to companies like Uber or Dropbox, you are giving someone a monetary reward. I say, I'll give you 10 euros if you tell your friend about Babbel. And all I'm thinking about is, hey, it would be nice to get 10 months off my Babbel subscription free. It would be nice to not pay for this product and still have someone to learn with. A social incentive is something similar to what a company like WhatsApp would do. So the product is actually useful for a user only when their friends are in it. The main benefit of the product and the reason for someone to invite a friend to the world of WhatsApp is for a social benefit. And talking about personal incentives, maybe you could think about Instagram stories. So my reason for uploading or using the feature of stories is potentially not to let my followers know this or that. It is for a personal brag. I'm humbly bragging about my daily experiences, my daily achievements, and that's when like a personal incentive comes into play. Really identifying what drives, and maybe you could be doing a combination of the two incentives, or really picking one motivation that could drive your advocates to talk about your product. And finally, when really determines what placements would work for your campaigns. Should I ask someone to invite a friend when they've just learned a new word with Babbel, when they've successfully completed a milestone? That's when users are on their peak high, when they would really like to share their achievements with someone else. So one reason for thinking about when could be identifying placements for approaching your users. I hope that's clear. I'll move on to the second framework. This one's, sorry about the wordy slide. I tried to make it pretty, but I couldn't. So I hope I can guide you with my voice. The first, we'll read from left to right. So the first column is potentially making a prediction of everything that you're trying to test. So for example, one of the predictions that we wanted to test for Y was just like, hey, I think increasing financial incentive from 10 euros to 20 euros will actually improve our advocacy rate by 10%. So we had a reason to believe that if we improve the stakes, people were more likely to recommend Babbel. In reality, this is what happened. So the actual column is a snapshot of what happened at the end of the experiment. The delta signifies how far were you from your predicted value. And the most important column is to track why this happened. And you can break down your why into external and internal factors, thinking about what were things that were beyond your control that changed this advocacy rate. And an example would be that the demand for your product in the market naturally increased because of external factors. So I recommended Babbel because more people were bored at home and wanted to learn, and not because the financial incentive actually drove me. And internal factors could be placements, messaging, wrong hypotheses, and really breaking down into why your experiments succeeded or failed in the form of a prediction helps you in building this iterative mindset where you're constantly thinking of which others can I and improve in my next experiment, rather than not having a structure to what are you actually trying to do when you're improving on the funnel loop. And the third and the most complex but data-driven framework would be to quantitatively assess what's happening inside your loop. So I'll do this again with you. What's happening here is you're reading the predicted value. So at the beginning of an experiment, you're saying how many people of the subscription base that we have are going to participate in it. Input variable. This is an input variable because we have full control over how many people can actually look at this feature. 60%, this is what we predicted. Assumption, advocacy rate. How of the 60% users that end up seeing this placement, how many of them will end up clicking on invite? And our prediction was maybe 7% will end up clicking on invite. When this invite link reaches their friends, 80% of them will actually end up visiting babbel.com. And this is because referrals obviously have a super high visit rate. The advocates do the filtering in their head. They think about, oh, do I know people who want to learn a language? I'm only going to share it with them. So the visit rate is very high versus traditional channels. And finally, the conversion rate is people that end up purchasing your product. And in our case, it was Babbel. So like we said, maybe it's just going to be standard, like 8% of them will end up turning into sales. And at the end of this experiment, we want to make 20,000 in revenue. What actually happened is a different story. So for each of these steps, what we end up doing is calculating the delta. How far were we from our predicted value? Assigning it, obviously, the standard traffic light colors, and being able to assess why did this happen. And obviously, for the sake of the test, you forget about the output because you'll see we almost made like our impressions were very low, but our revenue is not that far. How do I read this? How am I supposed to interpret this? So you start from reading the input variable and you say, actually, we wanted to roll this out on web and app, but we weren't able to roll the test out on the apps, and it was on web only, which resulted in a very small input variable. Next time, let you build your next steps from this Y. What does this say? Is the reward attractive or not? Were the traffic sources right to track the visit rate? Our conversion rate is very high, meaning advocacy. This product really works if this loop really works if friends are able to visit the portal. Very high proportion of them convert. So all the work that we have to do needs to be done at the very top of the funnel. And spoilers, just really being able to visualize the growth funnels in the form of loops and using these frameworks helped us in understanding the compounding effect of our activities. Just like a quick fact check, we were able to have 10% of our organic sales through this referral loop. We were able to increase our referral sales year over year applying these frameworks by 10%. And overall, we were able to manage $500,000 in total subscription revenue just by adopting this experiment, test, iterate approach. So if we were to go back to thinking about how does your app's core user base grow, I just want you to leave with this thought. Start thinking of ways in which your app users can start distributing content outside of your product and make them bring new users into the product. With that, I'd like to say thanks a lot for tuning in. And James, I don't know if we have questions and if I'm too early, too late. How am I on the time?
Let's see. We do have some questions in the chat. So let's see if we can. A lot of people saying it's super interesting. It's a bit hard for me to look. What I suggest is maybe go into the chat and answer some of those. A couple of people asking about, the different segments, and what about app? Did you do it for web? There's quite a few questions actually. So I think and people asking, saying it's super interesting. You're going to share the slides. So I think the best thing is probably if you can hop in there and maybe answer in person, that'd probably be easiest. And it was great session today. Really glad you could join us, and hopefully we can get you back next year or maybe one of our future events in person. And it's really interesting what you're doing, and really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope we can do more in-person events next year. So I'm happy to do some workshops if people are interested on this.
Yeah, we often do that. Sometimes, people come and do a talk, and then we can have phase 2 as a sort of, workshop or something. That'd be great. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Tanya.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.